All right, welcome everybody on YouTube. Today's topic in Clear Vision Wednesday is glaucoma. And the headline is "You Don't See It Coming." And you will soon understand why this is the headline that we chose. I have this little slideshow ready for you. Let me share my screen. And then you see myself. I see, you see myself on YouTube. Let me go back to the presentation. And then, so the way we're going to do this today is we're going to do the presentation. And then after the presentation, my guest, Jutta Schütte from Hamburg, Germany, is going to be there. She's going to share her own story. And then also she's going to answer all the great questions that you guys have submitted that we're going to then organize. Okay, so first of all, I realized I never introduced myself on these YouTube lives. So I'm Claudia Mühlenweg. I am the founder of Holistic Vision and the creator of the Naturally Clear Vision Method. I've been teaching vision improvement for almost 12 years now. And here's the thing that I do want to say every single time. I'm not an eye doctor, and the information in this presentation is not intended to replace traditional vision care. I really want, especially when we talk about things like eye diseases, right? You will have to go to an ophthalmologist's office to really get your eyes checked, especially when it comes to glaucoma. And we will talk about that more later. So just know that vision educators are not medical doctors, and that I'm not diagnosing you. We're not prescribing you anything, or we're not treating you in any shape or form medically for your vision or other health conditions. So I really want to make that clear. So, all right. So what is glaucoma? So I like to use a metaphor here, and this picture that I created. So basically, when you think of your brain, right, is the light bulb, and your eye or the retina is the plug, the optic nerve, right, is that cable that without the optic nerve, or the cable in this case, right, there wouldn't be any power to your brain, or no vision, or in this case, the light bulb. So glaucoma is a slow loss of the integrity of this cable that sends the electricity, in this case from the plug to the light bulb. But even in the human brain, it's actually an electric signal. So basically, it's funny when we think about this cable, because when my kids were little, we used to have guinea pigs. And sometimes, I like at some point a lamp didn't work anymore. And then I realized the little guinea pigs, they like to chew on the cables, and they kind of chewed on the cables. So in a way, you can think of glaucoma in a similar way. There's a little bit like chewing away on that optic nerve, on that cable. And it could also be that maybe your wiring, on your lamp or your optic nerve is kind of older. It starts to crumble. And I'm, oversimplifying this here. But that's basically, glaucoma is damage to the optic nerve and a loss of that signal from the eye to the brain, so that you can't really see properly. That's basically the magic, or not magic, but that's kind of the key message here. It's damage to your optic nerve. So here's the proper image, right, showing the human brain and the eyes and the visual cortex. So basically, glaucoma is a neurological disorder that slowly destroys the optic nerve, leading to a loss of peripheral vision. So that's really important to know, that in glaucoma, most of you are really aware of your central vision when you're reading, when we're looking straight ahead. But glaucoma is a loss of that peripheral vision on the sides, and also up and down, top and bottom. So with cataracts or macular degeneration, those are the eye diseases that you see because you lose that kind of central clarity. But glaucoma affects the peripheral vision. And that's why it's so dangerous and sneaky, because we don't really notice. And I will give you some great examples here. So that I just want to go over a few tests that your eye doctor can do to determine if you're at a risk, or if you already have glaucoma. One of them is called intraocular pressure, and you might have seen that on your report from your eye doctor. It's abbreviated IOP. Then the optic nerve assessment, that's when they look into your eye, you get the eye drops and they, the atropine, and they look into your eye, they take a picture of your optic nerve. Optic disc is technically more the term, and we will see a picture of that in a moment. Then another thing they do is a visual field assessment. That's basically assessing your peripheral vision. And then they also can measure the corneal thickness and the angle. And again, we will look at that in a second. So the intraocular pressure. So there's basically many different forms of glaucoma. And in some of them, the pressure is high. And what they consider high is anything over 21 millimeter of mercury, right? And anything between 10 and 21 is kind of considered normal. And it also, your eye pressure changes over the course of the day, just like your blood pressure. It's not this one static measurement that your doctor measures. So just know that it changes a little bit. And according to the Bright Focus Foundation, having eye pressures over 21 is not very common in generally healthy population. And it's known that eye pressure tends to increase with age, since the drainage system of the eyes does not function as well in many people as they get older. The second aspect is that the optic nerve, a healthy optic nerve can withstand a higher eye pressure than an optic nerve that is already unhealthy, right? You're already adding this extra load. And additionally, the intraocular pressure changes throughout the day, like I said, just like your blood pressure does. So you want to know that glaucoma is related to eye pressure. That's also another really important factor. And we will talk about non-tension glaucoma later, but it is related to eye pressure. So getting this checked regularly is super important, this IOP measurement. The second way to see glaucoma, right, to see if you already have it or if you're at a risk, is the optic nerve assessment. And it's pretty hard to see because in reality, the changes are really tiny and subtle, especially since it progresses so slowly. Also consider that your eye doctor cannot see the actual optic nerve in the system. So in the eye exam, right? They can only see that last slice where the nerve connects with the retina. And that slice, that what they can actually see is called the optic disc. And you can see in this image here that oh, sorry. I don't know how to turn this off. 1 second. Basically, you can see how the optic nerve is already basically damaged there, where that extra pressure goes, and you see that little indentation there. And we will look at that more in detail. So, when you think of that cable from the lamp, right? When you think of that cable, it's kind of that end slice of the cable right there that the doctor can see, right? As if you would cut that off, they can't actually see the rest of the whole cable or your optic nerve. 1 second, let me just, I get a call and I can't stop it. I don't know what to do. 1 second. All right, I'm back. So basically, this is the important stuff to know. And here's a picture of the actual, how it would look like. 1 second, why am I stuck here? Here's a picture where, this is actually a picture I got on Flickr, and I put the credits down below. But the left picture shows a regular healthy optic disc or optic nerve, how you can see it in the back of your eye. The middle picture shows a moderate glaucoma, and the right picture shows an advanced glaucoma. So you kind of see, but the reality is, if it's the same, this is like 3 different people shown here, right? But if it's the same person, the changes are so subtle. It's almost like, find the mistake in the 2 pictures. So especially since it goes really slowly. So it's not like, the left picture would be you in 1 year and the next year it looks like the middle picture. So it goes very, very, very slowly. That's absolutely important to know. And then the third test I talked about is the visual field assessment. So that's an additional test that they can do to the intraocular pressure, and the optic disc is looking at this field assessment. And you can literally here see the progression of glaucoma. So basically, the way this works, this test, you look at a center point, and then they give you flickering lights on the edges, and then you have to call out when you see that light entering your peripheral field. And in this case, the black areas here mean this is where basically the vision is lost. So this particular picture shows where most of the peripheral vision on the top is basically gone. But here's the thing. It doesn't look like this, right? We're all like, oh, wherever you don't see, it's like this black thing and you have this tunnel vision. Because if it would be that way, you would know right away if you had glaucoma. You'd be like, oh my God, all my left stuff is all black on my right or the top. So what happens in real life is, so instead of, right, so this is kind of a scene, like say you're driving a car and there's a family crossing the street. It doesn't look like this. Exactly, it's not like this, because you will be like, oh my God, I probably shouldn't be driving. What you actually see when you have glaucoma is this. And that's why it's so dangerous, because basically your brain fills in, and I did this in Photoshop really quickly, right? Photoshop has a content related thing that's really easy to make it look like. But that's what your brain does. Your brain fills in the missing pieces from whatever it sees. And that's why you don't realize you have glaucoma, because, and this is a really important aspect to know. So I hope you can see how dangerous it is that you're not really aware that you have glaucoma. Two other tests that I spoke about was the corneal thickness test and the angle test. So those are two additional tests where your doctor can kind of see. They're both painless, but basically the corneal thickness test will make sure that your cornea is not a factor for your intraocular pressure. So basically, if your cornea is really thin, your pressure can appear to be lower than it really is. And if your cornea is super thick, think of like a balloon, right? Then it could actually look like it's higher than it really is. So they're kind of doing that additional assessment. And the angle is, this is basically, the angle is this little space you can see in these really primitive drawings here, but you can see the left image is a regular kind of cornea. There's an angle, it's called open angle, and the one on the right is called closed angle. The iris is kind of in front, it's like pushed forward to the point where the iris might even touch the inner cornea. So there's like no more space left. And that's what they also look at in your eye exam. They look at what kind of angle is there between the iris and the inner side of the cornea. So here's like two different types of, this is just angles, right? But these are also related to glaucoma. So basically, you might have heard of open angle glaucoma or closed angle glaucoma. About 90%, I looked up different statistics, but about 80 to 90% of glaucoma cases have open angle glaucoma. And that's the one that develops so silently, right? Or like where I said, like it looks like that family is just not there in a crosswalk. It's not like, it's like a black thing. The closed angle glaucoma carries a way higher risk because, as you can see how the iris is pushed forward, that and I maybe have to backtrack a little bit. The ciliary body, right? That ciliary body that produces a liquid called aqueous humor. And that's a very liquid stuff that basically, gets produced and then it flows out. See where it says trabecular meshwork? So basically that's where the fluid gets released, right? In that kind of spot where the iris and the cornea touch. That's where that gets released. And if that closed angle is so tight that cannot release, or if there's something wrong with the trabecular meshwork, if it's like, think of a sponge, and think of that sponge as like really hard and it can't absorb or can't let anything through, that's when you get that high pressure. So a closed angle has a way higher risk. And it's also, there's a connection to very high farsightedness when the eyeball is too short. So it doesn't mean that everybody closed angle is farsighted or that everybody farsighted has a higher risk. I want to make that sure, but there is a connection to that. So important is to understand that both forms, so both open angle and closed angle, are related to pressure in the eye. And that's due to a lack of drainage. And you can see in this picture here where, you see that little liquid there in there behind the cornea, that dark blue stuff there. That's basically like the aqueous humor cannot drain through the trabecular meshwork for some reason. And that creates pressure, right? When it cannot release. So that drain can be completely blocked, or it can just be draining too slow, like there's more aqueous humor produced in the ciliary body than can drain, right? So that kind of circular, that kind of process is disturbed by some reason, for some reason. So the pressure here damages the optic disc and the optic nerve over time. And this is another graphic here. You can kind of see the difference between the open angle on the left, the normal circulation, right? That normal circulation of the aqueous humor in the normal eye or healthy eye, and then the closed angle on the right. And then the closed angle is, again, that can be where it's completely blocked, all the flow. So you might have also heard of normal tension glaucoma. This is where the pressure is not over that 21 millimeters of mercury, but there's still optic nerve damage. So you're like, well, why? How does that make sense, right? If the tension is not, or the pressure is not overly high. Normal tension glaucoma often occurs in people that have symptoms of blood flow impairment, because the blood flow is super important for all this to work, right? So if you have low blood pressure, if you tend to have really cold hands and feet, or if you get like symptoms of migraine headaches, right? If you have vascular issues where the veins are basically not functioning properly. So that can also be damaging the optic nerve, right? So that's the normal tension glaucoma. And with my special guest that we have here today, I will introduce her in a little bit. She will share more about that. So it's not always just the extra pressure in the eyeball that creates the damage. So I do want to say this again really clearly, like if you have a closed angle, you carry a way higher risk because it can kind of create that total blockage of the drainage, increasing the intraocular pressure very quickly. So this is that super high pressure really only happens with this closed angle glaucoma, when you have that kind of pressure of like 40 or 50 or really, really high. And that's called, if it's really going up that fast, if it's totally blocked, it's called an acute angle closure. And that's an emergency situation. You really want to go immediately to the doctor because this can lead to blindness quickly. This is not something to mess around with and be like, oh, I'm just going to wait. And it's very, very different from that slow, painless, and kind of silent development of the open angle glaucoma that we talked about. So these are some typical symptoms if you have one of these acute closed angle attacks or glaucoma attacks. So what happens a lot when the pupil dilates, let's say you're in a dark room, you watch TV, or you're in a movie theater, we can do that again, or maybe you're walking at night, because when the pupil dilates, the pressure can slowly increase in the back of your eye. Because this angle is so narrow, right? And when the pupil dilates, the drainage become even more obstructed. And that pressure then causes the iris to push forward and the angle to narrow even further. I hope that makes sense. So eventually blocking off most or all of the drainage of fluid from the eyes. And again, and that increases the pressure even more. So it goes up really fast. And the cornea, so one of the symptoms is the cornea might become cloudy, the eye become quite red, you can have pain, you can have even actually nausea and vomiting, you might see rainbows. So this is basically irreversible damage to your optic nerve. So this is like not to mess around with, really, really want to make that clear. So go to your doctor immediately or go to the emergency room if it's at night. They will do a small surgery called iridotomy, and that will allow the fluid to drain. So what causes glaucoma? Here are some risk factors. High eye pressure is obviously a risk factor. A family history is a risk factor. African or Hispanic ethnicity has a higher risk factor for glaucoma. I forgot the exact percentages, but it's a lot higher. A thin cornea, if you have low ocular perfusion pressure, right? And what does that mean? That's basically when you look at your blood pressure and your intraocular pressure, right? So it's a kind of a decrease in perfusion, basically significantly increases the ocular blood flow in the absence of what's called vascular auto-regulation. And maybe that's too complicated, but basically it's the pressure at which the blood enters the eye, and it's defined as the difference between the arterial and venous pressure in the eye. So, but basically that's what your eye doctor can determine with your blood pressure and your intraocular pressure. Type 2 diabetes is a risk factor. Very high levels of myopia is also a risk factor. Any eye injuries or surgeries, high blood pressure, and then also we will talk about that more, vitamin and nutrient deficiencies. So here's the thing. So we looked at all the physical aspect at this point, right? We didn't even look at anything else. But Louise Hay talked about glaucoma as a stony unforgiveness from an emotional and mental perspective. Pressure from long-standing hurts, being overwhelmed by it all. And the German doctor Ilse Strempel, she wrote 2 books on the eyes, and one just about glaucoma. And she really talks about like the personality type of a person that tends to develop glaucoma. It's kind of that high pressure from outside, or maybe your inner drive, like that type A personality. Often these people are really highly sensitive. There's also a tendency toward anxiety or depression. And again, she also, what Louise Hay says, like not resolved conflict. So there is a lot of that kind of pressure that you're putting on yourself, like for whatever reason. A traditional treatment is eye drops. There's a bunch of different kinds of eye drops, but they're all meant to basically lowering your intraocular pressure. And let's talk a little bit about natural vision practices. So important for prevention of glaucoma is really like movement, right? So all the good stuff that you've been learning from me and other natural vision teachers, right? Palming, resting your eyes, movement, swinging, the sunlight, all the things that I've been sharing here on this channel also. Tromboning, which is a way of looking near and far, that kind of, your lens goes from flat to bulgy. So that's a little bit, your ciliary muscle is relaxing and tightening. So you want to create movement. Diverging, converging is when you look up close, up far. It's just a specific practice, but it's also basically moving near and far. Blinking and breathing, and then peripheral stimulation is really, really important, because that's the area that you lose in glaucoma. So there's a lot of different, we're not going to go into all the different eye practices right now. There's lots of resources that I have. And then in general, right, movement and exercise. So with cardiovascular exercise, walking, swimming, easy hiking, biking, skating, light resistance training. So you want to improve your cardiovascular health, right? Your blood pressure, you want to have that under control. So everything that you hear from your general doctor about your general health totally applies here. And the reason I put easy hiking and light resistance training is because if you already have glaucoma, you don't want to add more pressure, right? You don't want to do like super heavy weights or crazy things. And I have some contraindications here, actually. So contraindications would be what's called inversions. If you do yoga, it would be like downward facing dog, headstands, or just a forward fold. Anything where your head is lower than your heart is called an inversion. You definitely don't want to do that at all. Diving, right, where you have that elevated pressure, or high elevation, like you don't want to climb Mount Everest if you already have glaucoma, in any kind of heavy lifting. And I'm going to go back to this slide here. So there's a generally healthy diet is really important, right? Lots of colorful food, veggies, nuts, seeds, legumes. A plant-based, whole food plant-based diet should be the foundation. Plenty of water. And here are some vitamins that there's several books, Dr. Mark Rothman's book, and then there's a book by Dr. Neil Adams about nutrition for the eyes, for the specific eye diseases. So these are some of the most important ones, but it doesn't mean that's, you should just take lots and lots of these, because you can take too much selenium that can actually make glaucoma worse. So it's not about just taking crazy amounts of these things, but these are some of the more important ones. If you have glaucoma, you might have deficiencies, especially the B vitamins, which are kind of the nerve vitamins, to oversimplify it a little bit. So here's my last slide. It's really about, making peace, relax, resolve conflict, like those are things that are really, really helpful. Don't just think in terms of eye exercises or stuff like that. Really, is there someone you haven't forgiven? Is there something where you're like really angry, where you just put all this pressure on yourself to be the best every time, or, so that kind of ends my presentation. And I will introduce my special guest now. Let me add a spotlight here. So Jutta Schütte is a vision educator from Hamburg, Germany, and we actually met. I think we met when I lived in Germany. We met at a vision conference. I can't even remember, but we've been kind of connected for basically at the very beginning of my vision teacher journey. I think 2010 is when we met, or 2009. It's been a long time. So welcome, Jutta, and I'm going to leave the stage to you, and you can share a little bit about your own journey and experience. Hold on, you're still muted.
Yeah, we also met in Edinburgh in the vision
Yes,
conference.
we did too, at the conference.
Yeah, thank you, Claudia. And I must say, you have really presented so well. It includes already quite a lot of detailed information, and it's really good. It's also, for me, it's really valuable to spread the news about these unknown facts of glaucoma, because so many people could be saved from this experience which I made. So this brings me.
You were the one actually pointing out to me, because I did actually think it was like these black spots, right? And you're like, no, this is not exactly how it is. And like, oh, like I didn't even know that, to be honest, right? So that was the biggest aha for me, to like, oh my, I know from Photoshop, the content fill, right, where you just fill in the gaps, but I'm like, wow.
Yes. And that is really a big problem. And I have written to the producers of such info material and they will just not change it. And so people think, oh, I can't have a glaucoma. My eye doesn't look like this. And I'm trying to change this. Yeah, so I found out I had a glaucoma because I found that if somebody took a photo with a flash, it really hurt my eye. And so I went to the eye doctor, but I had a second problem, and the eye doctor said, oh, I only have time for one problem. So a year later, again, I went with the other problem. And my vision field is the vision field which you saw in Claudia's presentation. So half of my right eye's periphery vision is gone. And I didn't even notice, because when you have two eyes, the other eye will just take over and you don't really notice it. And so luckily, I have been always going to the doctor, and they call it compliance. And I'm a really good patient. I'm really compliant with, I'm taking my drops regularly, and I'm taking care. I go to the checkup twice a year and all this. And so I'm really lucky that this hasn't got worse. That's the good message. Once you are in the system, and once you really take care of it, usually you can bring it to a halt. Yeah. And so, of course, I was really shocked when I saw it, and I had no idea about glaucoma. I didn't know what a glaucoma was, although my father had glaucoma too, but obviously he didn't know that it could affect his children as well. So he didn't tell us, and I only heard it afterwards. And then I informed all my family, and they went to the doctor, and my cousin had it too. And it wasn't that bad with her, but it was already advanced as well. And my sisters didn't have it. And now I'm trying to get my nephew and my niece, they are now around 40, and I try to get them to go to the doctor as well, because they have no problems. They don't see a reason why they should go and get it checked.
Wow.
Yeah. Mm.
I mean,
so,
I love, sorry, keep going, but I love how you just said, you know, you didn't know, right? You had no idea that you had it, and also that it was going on in your family. And if I would ask my mom, you know, like sometimes we just don't know, you know, what the rest of the family has, you know.
Yeah, but it was also many years ago. I mean, 30 years ago, they didn't really have the medication. Now they are very much advanced in comparison to 40 years ago or 30 years ago. And I know that my grandfather went blind, but nobody knew why. My mother did.
Right.
So,
or then they just say, oh, he's just old, you know, it's like, you know,
yeah,
that kind of.
Exactly. But now this is one of my, I'm really fighting for people not to get a glaucoma. I really try to inform as much as possible that people don't get this glaucoma, because it doesn't even matter if you have got it already. If you go to the doctor and he says, oh, you got a glaucoma, it's not a problem, but the next step is the problem. You have to take care of it. If you take care of it, it's all okay, usually. But if you
because
don't,
you were diagnosed, what, 17 years ago, right? Or
yes,
like
yes.
Yeah.
Mm.
And your vision hasn't deteriorated since then, because you were,
The doctor is always happy with me.
Yeah. Mm. So we got a bunch of questions. So we kind of grouped them together, you know, so that we don't have to go, because we got like almost 40 questions sent in. So I want to group them into kind of different categories. And one is like, you know, how do you find out if you have glaucoma? So one question that was submitted: is there an alternative to determine if you have glaucoma, to going to an eye doctor and having this whole new patient thing? Because, you know, here in the US, especially, everything is very expensive. So is there another way to find out if you have it without going to the eye doctor?
No, I'm sorry. There isn't really. Of course, you can check up your risk factors. And then if you say, oh, I don't have a low blood pressure, I don't have a family history, and I don't see why I should go to the eye doctor. It's a risk assessment. But if you have somebody in the family, and I would really get it checked when I'm 40, at least. Maybe not if you want to, if you really say, oh no, I want to keep it to the minimum. But I mean, vision is so important. It's so much more important. If I would rather check my vision than going on a holiday for 1 year. So it's when you lose it, it's quite a big loss.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So if you have any of the risk factors I listed, if you have, African American, Hispanic, you have a higher risk. If you have very high myopia, if you already have high blood pressure, low blood pressure, if you have any of these risk factors, or especially if you have a family history of glaucoma, right, then definitely if you're over 40, go to the eye doctor. And otherwise, and I don't know if anything is included in the vision exam. I think in Germany, the measuring of the pressure is maybe included, but then nothing else is included. None of the other tests are, I think, are. But,
yes, and if you have a low pressure, low tension glaucoma like I have, then you have a normal normal pressure, eye pressure, and you wouldn't notice, and people don't notice.
So how did they find out with you again? Like, just to be like, how did the eye doctor just did a visual field test, or how that happened, or because you knew from your family history and you did the whole exam?
No, because they did look into the eye.
Okay, so they look at the optic disc.
Yes, and then she said, "Oh, there's a big hole," or they also call it cup, or there is a big, yeah. So that's it had already quite advanced.
So just so like, this is not a question that was submitted. I'm just curious. So if your pressure is normal and you're at the very, very, very early stages where it basically just starts, right? Let's say, would the eye doctor see that with the looking at your optic nerve? That's kind of like, right? Like, or is it already to the point where they can see the damage? This is a question that nobody submitted, but I just
yes. Well, it's at the beginning, it's very, very difficult to assess. And the more advanced it is, the easier it is to assess.
Right.
I mean, you showed your picture with the 3 photos of the optic disc, and people, eye doctors who see a lot of glaucomas, they have a lot of experience as well. So in hospitals, I don't know if you can choose your doctors in where you are, or if you can choose the hospital doctors, they see more glaucomas than the doctors who only have with short-sightedness, far-sightedness.
So that's a really good tip. So also go to an ophthalmologist versus an optometrist. Optometrists, I think they're called opticians in Germany, but where you get your glass and contacts, you want to probably go to an ophthalmologist, right? Or somebody who's like experienced with glaucoma, so that they like, I love that what you just pointed out, they see so many so they might see it earlier than just some kind of small village, eye doctor or optometrist. Okay.
Yeah.
So does increased here, this is another great question. So does increased pressure mean you have glaucoma? If your pressure is like high, does it mean you have glaucoma?
Yeah. If you have a pressure of 40, there is definitely a need to act in whatever way. It could be, maybe it could also be other reasons, but you really have to do something. If you have a pressure of 22 or 23, it could be that you have no glaucoma. But it could also be that my pressure was like that. It was in the beginning, it was 22. And my eye doctor said, oh, we have to watch it. But if she had done with me a test with these little lights flickering, she would have already seen this terrible loss. But she didn't do it. So this is, you can't say it from the pressure. The pressure, there are people who have a pressure from 23 for 23 and they never develop a glaucoma in their life. There has been a study. But there are people who have only 20 or 18 and they develop a glaucoma.
So that's why I think where the angle and also where that thickness of the cornea, right, comes in. So if you have a thicker cornea, the pressure might read a little higher than it actually is, right? And if the cornea is thin, it might read lower. So that's why I think it's so important to get a really thorough assessment, and especially the visual field, like really get all these different assessments, because then they have a whole picture, whereas it's just the pressure itself is like giving us one information. And like blood pressure, it varies throughout the day, right? And Ilse Stempel did lots of different studies where she had this meditation, relaxation CD, and people listened to that for 30 minutes and the pressure was always way reduced.
Yes, exactly.
After that. So we will talk more about relaxation is absolutely key. We will talk more about that for sure, because some of the questions were obviously related to that. So here's a question. Everyone in my family has been diagnosed with glaucoma. Is this because glaucoma is hereditary, or does anyone with glaucoma in the family ever not get diagnosed with glaucoma? Like, is there anyone, or does everybody get
Yes.
that?
No. With my family, I just told the story with my family, and only a third or 20% had a glaucoma. So,
okay.
I mean, the rest is when we are 60, maybe all of us have glaucoma. I don't know, or 70. No, but I don't think it's, glaucoma is very much a question of personality. And if you are a relaxed person, then you probably never get a glaucoma. So that's also a risk factor, really. Are you a person who is suffering from stress? Are you asking very much of yourself? Do you want to do too much in life, maybe? And this is really a risk factor.
Thank you. Yeah, I should have added that to the risk factors. I was going more for the traditional ones, but this is what the eye doctors don't really look at that. They don't look at like, do you have any unresolved conflicts? Do you have any, are you like a type A personality? Are you always in the pressure cooker of like perfection, right? So I love that you pointed that out, because we all know, like, at least if you've been following myself or Jutta or other vision teachers, relaxation is the foundation of great eyesight. Yeah. And glaucoma is, where relaxation is absolutely crucial. And I will probably fix this and add another slide to that, because I think it's very important. So of course the question is it preventable?
Yes, that's very good, because my next point, which I just wanted to add as well, is really good for this. Yes, if you have a healthy habit in front of the computer, in your daily life, in your overall life, like having pauses, doing meditation, relaxing, eating healthy, and all this, doing sports, and in front of a computer, not staring. This is one of really, really important things, because when you stare, you don't move. And when you don't move, the system doesn't work. It can't drain the eye from the aqueous humor. And that is an important point. And also the exercises which Claudia mentioned, they are really good. Sunning makes the iris small, the pupil small in the iris, and so all the tissue comes away from the sides, and then the fluid can leave the eye.
So basically, when the iris gets small, can you explain that? I wish we had like a little animation or something cool, but when the iris, because I talked about the risk, right? When the pupil dilates in the dark, yes, right, that there's less. Okay, talk about that. So when the pupil is small.
Yes, when this pupil is small, all the tissue is in the middle. But when the pupil is wide, you see my hands, that's a tissue. All the tissue is around where the canal of Schlemm is. And in the way, it's in front of the exit.
The drainage, kind of think of the bathtub, right? Think of like you put you put something on top of the drainage in your bathtub, like, some rubber or whatever other plug. So then it's blocking it. So when the pupil
Yes.
is small, the plug is away from the drainage. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find a good metaphor for this.
Yes, yes. And I mean, if you do this, small, wide, it's like pumping. And this is what you do with sunning and palming. So with sunning, it gets small. With palming, it gets wide. That's also why you shouldn't palm too much when you have a glaucoma. You shouldn't palm too long, because when the pupil is wide, then the tissue is in the area.
Oh, that is a really great point. So usually I recommend palming for twice as long, but obviously with glaucoma, you want to shorten that. But I want to say, even with sunning, if the sun is, imagine it's coming from the front, and now I'm turning my head to the side. Now my left eye is kind of in the shade. So even with sunning, there's a small, like, you know, like from the small pupil, there's still a little bit of a movement. It's not going to go all the way dilated, and you know, but there's still a little bit of a pumping action.
Yes.
So great point about the palming.
And also when you do this movement, right and left, your eyes will probably follow. And so the muscles also do a movement, and that also will do a movement in the eye. And
awesome.
Also the far and near, that will change the lens, the size of the lens. It's a front, back. And also this will also cause a pumping motion.
Basically, yeah, you want to move your eyes, you know, and movement is a form of relaxation, by the way. People always think movement is exercise. That's another thing I want to highlight. Exercise is a tiny, tiny part of movement, right? When you think of everything we do is movement. Is this an exercise when I'm just standing on my balance board and moving? No, it's not an exercise, it's movement, right? Everything we do with our eyes, moving our attention, is not an exercise. Tromboning might be considered an exercise, or walking with a Brock string or something. But really important is that you want to move, right? Your body, your eyes, that, you know, everything is moving.
Yes.
So,
and activating the periphery is of course also very good. And I mean, if you close one eye and you move your hands, for example, I can't see my hand here. I can't see it here. I should see it. I can't see my finger now. And now I can see it. But because this is gone, I mean, if you have already big vision loss, you might be able to find out about it, but this is not safe. So I really can recommend only the doctor for this.
Right, yeah. Because if it's already bad, then you will notice, right? Like you said, you don't see that in your periphery. So yeah, I do a lot of in my trainings. We use these occluders, you know, where you block the central vision, and then one eye has peripheral vision. Or, you know, Mir Schneider, I teach that to Mir Schneider. I don't have a big, but he has that kind of way, you know, where you block your central vision with an eye patch or something, but not eye patch, a post-it. So like all these things are great to, you know, because there's such a focus on that tunnel vision, on that kind of like staring at the computer. And it's really like you and I, we both say that all the time, the peripheral vision people, don't forget about the peripheral vision. Okay, great. Lots of great tips for prevention. So is there a specific thing, if there is a family history, it's basically the same prevention, right? There's nothing different than if you have a family history other than going to the eye doctor earlier. But other than that, there's really nothing else that would be different in terms of prevention, right? It's kind of go to the eye doctor and do the things you talk about.
As in Germany, we have reductions. If you are a family member of glaucoma person, then and you get glaucoma, then all your tests are free anyway. I don't know what's it like in America.
Oh no, wishful thinking in America. I mean, we have a horrible healthcare system. It's a sick care system, first of all. But I mean, even then, no. I mean, I don't honestly know other differences, but I know that it's. So yeah, I can't tell. There's so many different insurance levels, but basically, okay. So now the next questions are about. Let me see, what can we ask next? Reversal. Of course, there's the question like, is there a natural way to reverse the vision loss from glaucoma?
Yeah. Is there a way anyway to reverse?
Right, natural or not natural, yeah.
So there have been people who have reversed their glaucoma damage. Usually people say, the doctors say it's not possible, but if sometimes the cells recover, it's not only the loss of the optic nerve, but when the optic nerve is damaged, also the cells in the retina get damaged because there's no connection anymore. And but sometimes they can be revived.
What do you mean no connection? Can you explain that a little bit? There's no connection.
Yeah. Well, if we take your picture with
maybe I should get the picture up. Which one was it again that you're talking about?
With the socket and the plug and
okay, oh yeah, the one with the glaucoma with the little where it was sucked in. Okay, let me share my screen again. I will get that picture back up. You mean this one, right?
No, sorry, with the one with where the mice are nibbling. With the electric bulb. It's upper, it's further up.
Okay, that one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if the optic nerve is damaged, then there is no connection between brain and retina. And so there is, the retina is not anymore.
I see what you mean.
There is no use of the cells in the retina.
Right, same with this picture here. If this, this optic nerve here is damaged.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, got it. Okay,
but
that makes sense.
In this optic nerve, there are 125 million nerve fibers, and we have 125 million nerve cells, optic nerve cells. So.
Okay, so basically, it's like, but particular parts in the retina might be. Missing or might not function anymore. If you if you can revive or rejuvenate or revitalize or whatever you want to call it,
and by activating the periphery, by activating them, it's that can help. There have been reports of people who have done this, and but it's I would always suggest it's good to be, this is a psychological thing. If you are afraid of the vision loss, that it gets worse and worse and worse, this will make it worse. So it's really so important not to have fear, but to be, was heißt denn Vertrauen, voller Vertrauen?
Trust.
Yeah. So with trust, to look into the future with trust, that is the best medicine.
Oh my God, I love that so much that you just said that, Jutta. Oh my God, we have to kind of create posters or stickers with that, honestly, for glaucoma, because I think if you don't address, this is the thing, everybody is so focused on the physical stuff, the supplements, the diet, the exercises, but you have to address, and this doesn't just go for glaucoma, that goes for every vision challenge. You have to address the emotional and mental aspects of that. And maybe that means going to therapy, right? It means, maybe, right? So doing, it's I think this is, thank you for highlighting this.
Yeah, Ilse Strempel has made the proof. With her study, it was really a proof. But I think it was hard to get this recognized.
Yeah, I don't have a glaucoma book. Ilse Strempel, she wrote, this is called The Other Eye book. I have this from her. I don't think there's an English version. This is all in German. But she's an ophthalmologist in Germany. She did all these studies, but she was kind of like how Bates 100 years ago, everybody laughed at him like, oh, what you're doing is cuckoo, right? So she, she's one of the few ophthalmologists, in the traditional field who has really made big leaps forward to look at the look at the head, like the mental aspects, and not just your blood pressure and
and she said also glaucoma is more than an eye disease. That's the title of another book, and it is true. It's so much connected, especially for the low normal pressure glaucoma.
For the ones with the regular pressure glaucoma, you mean?
Yes. It's more a question of the blood flow. So if you have a normal tension glaucoma, then it's good to go to the normal doctor and get your blood circulation checked. If sometimes it's dropping too low in the night, so for this it's good to drink water in the evening, or they recommend a salty soup. A soup in the evening before you go to bed, to keep up the water in the body and that can help to so that the blood pressure doesn't drop too low, because this can give real problem. And there's a specialist in Switzerland, Professor Flammer, Flammer. And he is a really good specialist, and he has done lots of research on the normal tension glaucoma and what you can do, because that's totally different to the other forms of glaucoma.
That would be great if you can. I will post even on YouTube. I will post all these links. I will do it later today. I will post all these links. If you have a link to that, and then Ilse Strempel. The only problem with Ilse Strempel is I think the books are not translated into English, unfortunately. So, and yeah, you're bringing up.
I will get the link for Professor Flammer.
Great.
And he's got an English page.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, I thank you so much for pointing all that out. And there's obviously the questions, is there any kind of diet? And I mean, I put that in my slides, so we don't have to go over that, but you want to eat a clean diet and you want to, take those, make sure you get enough B vitamins, and, you can look at your genetics, see if there's any SNPs, if you have any problems with methylating any of the, like converting them in your body. So it's really important to get that checked as well. You can go to a good naturopathic doctor or something. But I love what you pointed out about low blood pressure, because we all talk about, high blood pressure. We talk about low blood pressure, or like even thin, if you're like a skinny person, we talk about, obesity is bad, right? But some people that are overly skinny and that have pure circulation going on, we don't talk about that as a risk factor, right? And I think that's so important that you highlighted that. It's not just always, the high blood pressure or, overweight or other stuff that's a problem for your health and your eyes.
Yes.
Yeah. Let me see. I'm looking at the questions. We have a few more. We're almost out of time, but we had, let's see. Can anything be done about the burning that the glaucoma medication causes in the eye? So this is someone already taking the eye drops, which is, by the way, eye drops are the most common form of treatment. They lower the intraocular pressure. So what if if it's burning? Like, what can you do?
Yes. There are different eye drops and they burn differently. So you could also even change the eye medication, but usually the drops which have been chosen have been the best ones. And you can you can do it. There are often, when you have eye drops, you get a little bottle, or you get single doses. So if you get the single doses, there is no conservative fluid in it. And that is often the one which does the burning. So if you get the single doses, that might be really good help.
Oh, I see. So while it's, a little bit more packaging waste, getting the single, shots, so to speak, to put in your eyes, that doesn't have the or what do you call that now? I'm blanking on the English word too, but all the bad stuff that you don't want in the,
Yes.
If you get the big bottle, it has like the preservative. Thank you so much, friend. I was like, what is the name? I can't think of it right now. So that's a good tip, right? So that might be easier on the eyes if you get the single dosage ones.
Yes.
Okay. I get that with guacamole too, even though they have this little like single serving cups of guacamole, but avocados, it gets really brown. And if you're by yourself, you have this big pot of yummy guacamole and then it's like brown, but I always feel bad for the environment, but at the end of the day, so thank you. That's a great tip.
And also blinking a lot, blinking, breathing, blinking for always having your skin, your cornea moist. That's really very important. And when you use a lot of drops, then they might get a little bit, they might suffer a little bit from it. So you can also do, put in a drop of tear fluid, and which just moisturizes your cornea. And after 10 minutes, only then apply the eye drops against the glaucoma. Then you can be sure that
so it doesn't burn so much.
Yeah.
Usually I don't recommend tears, artificial tears, because they reduce your tear production, but you're talking specifically as an answer if you have that burning and you want to reduce the burning that you do, like, so I want to make clear that this is not something that everybody should be doing, but if you have that burning, go do some artificial tears first, then wait a few minutes, put the other one, and then use the single serving glaucoma medication eye drops so that you don't have the preservatives in there. Okay, great. And I mean, basically, I think the very last question is, could you explain the cups and where they are located in relationship to the optic nerve? Like, what does deep cup mean?
Yeah, when you have papilla, the optic.
I think it's called papilla in English. Let me.
Yeah, the optic disc. Can you show us your photo with the three?
Oh, the photo with the three. This one here.
Yeah. You can see on the right-hand side. You can see that it looks more yellow.
Yes.
And it looks more yellow because it's deeper. There is a little cup. You could say it's the
maybe like this one here.
Yeah, the tissue has receded.
Okay, I see.
And so that is a little, it's not a round. In this case, it's not a round cup, but it's really more round than it's not quite as on this picture.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, I think we get the idea with these visuals. That's why I put them together, because I'm a visual learner, and if I don't see the visual picture, I don't really understand. But yeah, and what I like about this one, you see all the arteries and veins here, right, in the optic nerve, going into your retina, and we don't think about the blood vessels like in the nerve and in the in the retina, but this is where the blood flow, where the issues are with you have regular tension or normal tension, glaucoma. It's not necessarily that the pressure is too high, but it's like that there's the blood flow is impaired, and that's what when the cells die off, right? I mean, yeah. Okay, great. I mean, that was kind of the end of this. Okay, we stuck to 1 hour. I'm so happy. I thought like we would go over. We have a few questions in our Clear Vision Club community, so I will turn the YouTube live off, and there's a few extra questions in there that we will answer. But basically, we kind of called together the most commonly asked questions, and hopefully with the presentation and the Q&A afterwards with Jutta, thank you so much. It's going to be helpful, and I will post all the links underneath the YouTube video after we're done later today. So you get all the links and the researchers. And I love a group called the Bright Focus Foundation. They have really great resources. They do also free phone calls. I'm not associated with them in any shape or form, but if you go to Bright Focus, like bright, like as in light, brightfocus.org, they also have a lot of information on glaucoma, and they do, again, I think they do these monthly phone calls. They're free, you can attend, and I just think they're a wonderful organization. So again, no association with them, but I think they're awesome. So if you want to get some support, you can also reach out there. Okay, I will end the YouTube live. So goodbye, YouTube. I see you next Wednesday. And next Wednesday, I think we have Trisha, one of our Clear Vision Club members, talking